A girl with beauty and brains, Danielle Ursini had the world at her feet. And in the spring of 1993, the 29-year-old decided it was time for a change of scenery. She moved from the Big Apple to sunny Palm Beach, Florida.
I found New York to be much more aggressive and fast-paced, and I really wanted to get away from that. So for me, Florida was a much healthier environment. I found the people to be much friendlier. I knew this is where I wanted to live.
But finding time to meet some of those friendly people wasn't so easy.
I worked so many hours. Dating just was not a part of my life. I wasn't even sure how I would be able to fit it in.
So when her friend suggested she check out the local classified ads for a date, Danielle decided to give it a go. And one soon struck her fancy. A successful businessman looking for a professional woman.
It wasn't someone to just have a good time with. The ad was more maybe looking for a meaningful relationship, and I liked that. So I actually called.
The man who answered was 31-year-old Tom Abrams. And what followed was a 3-hour marathon conversation.
Tom told me that he went to a very well-respected university in South Florida. That's where he pursued his MBA and also played football. He also shared that he was a stockbroker and that he owned his own firm. So I was very intrigued.
An academic, an athlete, and an entrepreneur. Everything about Tom seemed too good to be true. Danielle hung up the phone feeling eager to meet Tom in person. A couple days later, she got her chance.
On our first date, we went to a local movie theater to see an animated kids movie. He wasn't just a businessman in a suit. He could also have a more playful, fun side to him. Of course, I loved that.
As more thoughtful dates followed, the middle-class New York girl found herself in an upper-class fairy tale.
There was a lot of whining and dining. He always bought me beautiful, beautiful jewelry. So this was really a whole new world for me.
Danielle definitely fell hard and fast for Tom. It was a whirlwind. He swept her off her feet.
Behind all the presents and pampering, a genuine love began to flourish.
I was very comfortable with him. It just seemed like this was just a perfect fit, a perfect match.
So after just 4 months of dating, Danielle was ecstatic when Tom popped the question.
We knew we both wanted to be married and we both wanted to have a family. So I was very, very excited. It was all part of the fairy tale.
A few weeks before the wedding, Danielle decided it was time for her to do something special for Tom.
I had wanted to put together a scrapbook. I really was interested in getting pictures from his college football days because memorabilia was really important to me.
But when Danielle asked Tom about the photos, his response took her by surprise.
He told me that he had lived in a trailer and that there was a fire and that everything was destroyed. He had lost all of his pictures, all of his degrees, everything was gone. And I was just devastated to hear that.
Danielle could tell it was a sensitive subject for Tom, so she decided to focus on their future instead of Tom's past. A few months later, the two lovebirds tied the knot in a small ceremony with just their closest friends and family in attendance.
It was a fairy tale wedding right there on the lake. I can remember walking down and the harpist playing. It was beautiful.
It's definitely a storybook relationship. So she was very happy. It doesn't get any more perfect than that.
With 2 words, I do, a simple girl from Queens became a Palm Beach princess and officially joined the privileged world of Tom Abrams.
We were going to begin our life together, and it was going to be a perfect life.
But all that glitter was not gold. And behind Tom's sparkly exterior was a very dark secret. One that would turn Danielle's fairy tale into a nightmare.
He was definitely a master manipulator.
This guy knows what he's doing.
I never could have prepared myself for how terrifying things would become.
In the summer of 1994, newlyweds Danielle and Tom Abrams were living the high life.
We were really enjoying being newlyweds. He was working full-time, and we then opened my counseling center. And about 6 months later, I was pregnant. Tom was just delighted to hear that his first child would be a son, and someday would be the heir to his business.
But every prince needs a castle, and Tom decided an upgrade was in order. So the couple soon found themselves buying a luxurious house in the prestigious Aero Club.
People like to say, oh, I live in the Aero Club, and people knew where the Aero Club was. They had their own landing strip, and you actually land your private plane in your backyard. So it was a status symbol for Tom.
But with the purchase of the new home, Danielle noticed Tom's spending went beyond luxurious. It became downright gluttonous.
I took a small trip to New York, and when I came back, he had leased a Ferrari.
Tom bought a race car. He bought a plane. And I thought, wow, that's a lot. When it came to toys, there were no boundaries. He wanted it, he was going to buy it.
As Tom's spending got more and more out of hand, Danielle became increasingly uneasy.
It was always bigger and bigger and bigger. And on a moral level, that worried me. But Tom would explain that it was necessary because he managed people's money and you had to make a good impression. So I was torn between 2 worlds.
When their son was born in August of 1995, Danielle became more disenchanted by Tom's world when it seemed he had no interest in spending time with her or their new baby.
He wouldn't be home from the office until really late, and that was difficult. But again, he had to run the business. He was managing the finances of some prominent people, and he had to present the image and live it out.
Not that Danielle's husband wasn't at times gracious with money. Tom had, after all, started the Phoenix Foundation to raise funds for charities benefiting needy kids.
Abrams' chief claim to fame was his charity that was doing so much good work down here in South Florida. And he was a gregarious guy, and he knew how to throw a party.
He launched his first charitable grand-scale event. Tom was rubbing elbows with celebrities and athletes and high society. This was definitely an image builder.
While Tom focused on his reputation, Danielle focused on family. And in May of 1997, the couple welcomed a second child into the world. This time, a baby girl.
I hoped that when we had the second baby, maybe he would be home more, maybe he would be more involved.
But as Tom's work hours increased, so did Danielle's suspicions. She couldn't help but wonder if something else, or someone else, was keeping her husband away.
He would tell me he was at business meetings until late.
I have to work late. You know this.
I'd wonder, was he really at a business meeting? Was there something else going on? I would question him, and he would really get angry.
Don't question me about my work. You know.
So then that would just stop that. The message was clear. Don't ask.
But that fall, Danielle was forced to set her suspicions aside when Tom came home with some troubling news that would change everything.
He had all the outward signs of success. It took everyone aback.
No one had any idea of what Tom was capable of doing.
I remember being in a full-blown panic.
In the fall of 1997, Danielle Abrams was stunned when her husband Tom came home with some disturbing news.
I could see that he was a little more rattled or uptight than his normal confident composure. Tom told me that a particular client invested money with him, but her husband was not comfortable.
What do you want from here?
He wanted her to get the money back.
Which for Tom was easier said than done.
Tom told me it wasn't as quick as the husband expected to get the money back. There were some glitches.
Tom admitted his clients were now starting to question his business practices.
It really caused a stir. People became very angry, very resentful.
Danielle started to hear just little talk, little gossip around town. She thought something was not right. I didn't know where the stigma ends, if it's going to have any backlash on my friend.
We had an alarm system on the home, but I still did not feel real safe. In my mind, we were becoming more and more of a target. I started to become really fearful for our children's safety. I remember being in a full-blown panic.
To keep her family out of the crosshairs, Danielle thought it was best to maintain a low profile.
I told him very definitively, I know you need an image and an impression, but we need to downsize our lives.
We need the house. We need the membership. We need all these things.
And he did not like the idea of it at all.
I don't want to hear another word about it.
Instead, in an effort to repair his reputation, Tom's spending hit a whole new level. His largest and most extravagant purchase being a $100,000 membership to Palm Beach's most exclusive private club, the Mar-a-Lago.
With each new toy that Tom purchased, he was putting his family, his wife and children at risk. I went into protective mode.
One night in April of 1999, Danielle finally put her foot down.
When we had finished dinner with the kids and gave them their baths and put them to bed, I told him that I really felt like something needed to change. But he made it very clear to me, if you're not on my team, helping me reach my goals,
Then I don't need you.
he literally went into the master bedroom, took some trash bags, filled them, and moved out. And I was speechless.
I think in Tom's eyes, she was just supposed to enjoy her children and everything that she had and not question anything he was doing.
I was in a lot of pain, but I had to do it. Divorce was the only option at that point.
In December 2000, after 5 years of marriage, Danielle and Tom's divorce was final. But as the year went on, Danielle got wind of his new life through mutual friends.
The divorce definitely did not slow Tom down. He was schmoozing every night at different Palm Beach events, black tie events.
Despite appearances, Danielle's gut feeling was that Tom's world was closing in on him.
I could see his extravagant and reckless behavior just really ramping up, and he just couldn't keep going in that direction. It was going to blow up in his face.
Danielle had no idea how right she was until November 8th, 2001, when she turned on the news and finally discovered the devastating secret that Tom had been hiding all along.
There were so many lies. It was catastrophic.
He knew what he was doing. He intentionally hurt people.
It was devastating to hear the magnitude of what he had done.
On November 8th, 2001, Danielle Abrams turned on the television and was astonished to see her ex-husband Tom on the local news.
There were FBI guys all around Tom's house. They were reporting that he was arrested. I just was stunned.
Danielle sat in disbelief as the news report announced that Tom Abrams had been arrested for masterminding a multi-million-dollar Ponzi scheme.
A classic Ponzi scheme is when you take new investors' money to pay off old investors and probably take a slice of it yourself. Abrams represented that he had managed more than $1 billion, when in fact he had far, far less.
After an anonymous tip prompted the FBI to take a closer look at Tom's business, what they found was astonishing.
He created these false statements. He told people that he was investing their money. And in fact, he took in almost $70 million from victims.
Danielle was shocked to learn that Tom had been scamming investors throughout their entire marriage.
Everything that I believed to be true about my husband was not as it appeared. It was hard because he really just devastated so many lives.
The worst part of Tom's scam, however, was whom he was scamming.
The types of investors that Tom Abrams had in his company were some of the most vulnerable people that he knew. Most of them were retirees and elderly people who were looking for a safe place to put their money.
Little did they know their money was gone the moment it exchanged hands.
One of the more heart-wrenching stories involved a man whose wife was dying of cancer and lost in the neighborhood of $750,000 because Tom Abrams cleaned out his accounts.
After the press aired Tom's dirty laundry, Danielle was able to trace his lies all the way back to when they met.
He was lying about his education, the fire that destroyed all of his pictures and memorabilia, because there was no record of Tom attending that university or playing football there. He created this whole personality. In the end, my husband not only committed fraud, but turned out to be a fraud.
On September 30th, 2002, Tom Abrams pled guilty to 15 counts of fraud and money laundering related to his Ponzi scheme and was sentenced to 25 years in prison. And Danielle lost everything she'd gained in her divorce settlement, given that it was investors' money, not Tom's.
I don't miss that lifestyle for a moment. How do you compensate for the loss and the damage and the devastation to so many lives? I think that's a tough one that I've carried.
Today, Danielle and her 2 children, now teenagers, are thriving despite their family's ordeal.
It's been difficult for my children, but our faith and dependence on God is really what has carried all of us through.
Danielle is very resilient. She's done very well for herself. She just went on with her life being a mom.
Through her experience, Danielle has learned that no one is immune to the powers of a con artist.
Being a trained mental health professional, I should have known better, but he knew exactly how to hook me in. So pay attention to the red flags. Better to be safe than sorry in the end.
In the spring of 2010, Amy Anderton was having the time of her life. The perky 28-year-old was newly single and enjoying every minute of it.
I was excited about love and romance, and I thought the world was my oyster, and there was a lot of fish in the sea.
So that March, while Amy was hanging out at an Irish pub in Portland, Oregon, she didn't mind when one of the other patrons approached her.
How you doing?
I was finishing my glass of wine, settling up my tab, and he nonchalantly started a conversation with me.
The charismatic 34-year-old introduced himself as Logan Storm.
He had a thick Irish accent. He started talking about how he was a school teacher and how he was a do-gooder.
What about you?
He asked me about my job and found out that I did community work for a nonprofit. He was very excited to hear about what I did for work.
Catch you later.
As the two went their separate ways, Amy didn't think much of the encounter until she arrived home and discovered a surprise from her new friend.
I found a little matchbook in my purse. It said, "The shy Irish fellow from the bar fancies you." He left his phone number on the note. His charismatic charm, it caught my interest, and I thought it was kind of sweet that he was saying he fancied me. So I sent him a text message. I wanted to see what it was about.
Logan responded right away and insisted on setting a date immediately the following night. Before Amy knew it, they were having a romantic dinner in a quaint little restaurant nearby.
It was nice. It was good conversation, getting to know each other. He had a lot to say about growing up in Ireland. He told me that he had a son that lived with him part-time, 3 days a week. He was very flirtatious, and I was flattered.
Logan was keen to see Amy again that weekend, so she invited him to a barbecue, and instantly, her friends were hooked.
He was a nice guy. He was energetic, happy. He seemed to really care about Amy.
Logan seemed absolutely smitten with Amy. He was very starry-eyed over her. So I was encouraging Amy to see what becomes of this relationship.
Amy took her friend's advice and soon learned some interesting things about her new beau.
We were at a gathering with some friends, and I heard him talking about a former student who became a stripper.
I'm sexy a stripper. Really?
And he was mentoring her. I didn't give it much thought because he was always trying to help other people be positive and be their support.
But it wasn't until Logan began opening up about his own difficult past that Amy truly understood why staying positive was such a focus in his life.
He said that his dad spent time in a psychiatric hospital. So his mom thought that it was safer for him to grow up with his grandparents in Belfast, Ireland.
I was dating this girl for a little while. And she blew herself up making a film.
He never said specifically that he was involved with the IRA, but he alluded to that, and that's when they deported him.
To the United States.
Logan told Amy he eventually found his way back to Portland, where he'd managed to mend his relationship with his parents.
I admired him. I thought that it was great that he could grow up under such circumstances and become someone great.
But Amy would soon learn that this do-gooder was actually as bad as they come, as his vortex of lies pulled her into a world she never imagined.
I was just blown away at the levels of deception.
There was something mentally broken with him.
I was trying to make sense of what was going on. I felt gullible. I felt betrayed.
In the spring of 2010, Amy Anderton was starting to fall hard for her new Irish love interest, Logan Storm.
As a couple, We did a lot of different things together, getting to know each other, but I wanted to date for a little while and not rush into a relationship.
Amy was happy taking things slowly, especially when it came to meeting Logan's 12-year-old son. But Logan had other ideas, and he made them clear one Sunday morning in May.
Logan was going to pick up his son and specifically told me, "We're not coming back here directly, so take your time getting up and getting ready and let yourself out." So I was wandering around the house and making some coffee.
Before Amy knew it, she saw Logan and his son walking up the sidewalk.
I kind of freaked out and ran into his bedroom and shut the door. They came in and Logan said, "Son, Amy's still here. Would you like to meet her?" My heart sunk into my stomach and I just gulped. So I said, "Hi. Nice to meet you."
This is Amy.
I was kind of upset with him. It's like he wasn't respecting how I felt or my boundaries.
When Amy confronted him about it later that day, it was Logan who drew a line in the sand.
That made me feel really uncomfortable.
Oh, so it's all about you? Well, what about us?
He told me that he was not willing to invest in a relationship that wasn't going anywhere.
How are you supposed to have a relationship together without trust?
He wanted me to just let go and to just trust him.
So Amy decided to do just that, let go and take a chance.
That made an impression on me, and I thought that the relationship had potential to last forever.
But by the middle of May, Amy started to notice something was troubling her new boyfriend.
I could tell Logan was struggling financially. He talked about how it was hard for him to pay his bills. He said that he couldn't afford his house, and the only place that he could afford would be a little one-bedroom apartment.
And by the beginning of June, Amy couldn't take it any longer.
He made me feel like I had something that I could offer him to make his situation better. If I asked one of my roommates to move out, then he and his son could move into my house. So I offered it, and I was feeling pretty good about it.
It seemed an act of convenience for him to move in with her, as opposed to a conscious choice they made as a couple. But I was still emphasizing to Amy that I thought he was a catch.
Then, just a few weeks after Logan started to move in, their relationship was tested yet again.
It was about 11:30 p.m., and his phone rang.
Hey, let's do that.
He said, "Oh, it's my former student who's a stripper, and she wants a ride home from the strip club." My reaction to that was, well, that's not okay, and if you want to have a relationship with me, you can't have other relationships like that going on.
You should not be talking with this girl.
No,
Come back here.
He turned it around on me and said that I was making a big deal and stormed out of the house. I felt like he was hiding things from me.
Soon, Amy would uncover exactly what Logan was hiding, and the horrific truth would haunt her forever.
Amy was incredibly disturbed.
I was scared of what I had found. It was shocking to me.
You need to set boundaries.
No, this is ridiculous.
What are you trying to do?
In June 2010, after fighting with her boyfriend Logan Storm about his mentorship of a former student-turned-stripper, Amy decided to confide in a friend.
She told me that she sensed something was wrong, and she told me I needed to look into it. It was not normal.
Come back here.
Amy initially resisted and went over to Logan's to talk with him instead.
Amy seemed freaked out that he didn't know what could be wrong with that. That was completely inappropriate.
We had a very serious discussion about boundaries, and I asked him to call his former student and set up a time to go out to lunch or coffee with her and set some good boundaries. So he took my advice, which made me feel good.
While Amy felt she was making progress with Logan, she couldn't ignore her gut.
There was still something deep down inside of me that was questioning if he was hiding things. I didn't really trust him.
So Amy decided to play detective. She had no idea this was merely the calm before the storm. On the morning of July 23rd, Amy waited for Logan to leave for work before looking through his things.
I was feeling like Logan was hiding something, and I wanted to see what he was hiding. He had a jewelry box on the dresser, and I looked in it and saw a thumb drive. It looked like it was tucked under things to be hidden. I wanted to see what was on it, so I plugged it into the computer. I wasn't able to process what I was seeing.
Oh my God.
It was shocking to me. I found hundreds of pictures of child pornography on it. Very explicit, disturbing images of little children that were being raped and abused. I was scared of what I had found, and I didn't know how to respond to it.
Heart racing, Amy returned the thumb drive to its hiding spot.
Logan came home from work.
How you doing?
All right.
He took one look at me and said,
You look like you've seen a ghost.
and my response to him was, no, I'm just stressed out. I was nervous about bringing it up. I thought that maybe he would hurt me, to keep me quiet, to not tell anyone.
The next morning, she told Logan she'd made 2 decisions.
I told Logan I needed a break, and I needed to go visit my family in Utah. And I told Logan that I needed him to move out before I got back. He screamed loud, just let out a bellowing scream, just clenched his fists and screamed at the top of his lungs. I became more scared of him.
Amy quickly left and arrived a few hours later at her family's home in Utah. Once safe and secure, she made the most important decision of her life.
I decided to turn him in. I called 911. They had me describe everything and what I saw.
There were children, and they were really graphic.
The police got a search warrant and went to the home shortly after that. They told Logan that they needed to search the premises. They feared they were going to find images of child pornography on his computer. Logan remained completely calm. He wasn't shocked. He wasn't surprised. The detectives confiscated the computer and the thumb drive, but they did not arrest him at that point. They wanted to make sure their evidence remained intact. They didn't want to lose any of it. They didn't want to jeopardize it.
As soon as authorities examined the images on the thumb drive, they immediately put out a warrant for Logan's arrest.
He fled very suddenly. That was certainly not the behavior of someone who had nothing to hide.
While investigators searched frantically for the fugitive, Amy cautiously returned home to Portland, only to discover that her nightmare had just begun.
We did not see this coming.
I felt afraid for my life. I didn't know what he was capable of.
In the summer of 2010, Amy Anderton was terrified after her ex-boyfriend Logan Storm went on the run.
I was pretty scared for my life. I knew that he knew it was me who found the child pornography and called the police. I didn't know where he went, but when I came home, all of my things had been gone through in my room, and my spare key was not in its place. I thought Logan had been involved with the IRA in Ireland. So I called the cops because I thought that he had planted a bomb in my car.
While police found no evidence of a bomb, they did have an explosive piece of news for Amy. There was no chance that Logan was ever affiliated with the IRA. In fact, he never lived in Ireland.
The cops started to tell me that Logan grew up in Portland, Oregon, and didn't have an Irish accent. It was all a lie. I was just in shock. It made me realize I did not know who he was, and therefore I didn't know what he was capable of. I got a weapon and slept with it by my bed. I changed the locks because every sound of anything woke me up thinking it was him coming after me and getting revenge for ruining his life.
Amy was terrified. No one knew where he was, and the stress was really getting to her.
As Amy battled a flood of emotions, she realized everything Logan had told her was a lie.
I don't believe that his father spent time in a psychiatric hospital. I think that Logan made all of those things up to make himself look like a victim. He was manipulating me.
Equally disturbing was how Amy felt Logan had clearly turned his own son into a chess piece.
I think he was using his son to move into my house. I think it looked good for him to live with me, to have a girlfriend who was doing this good work in the community, and he was using me just to get what he wanted. I felt gullible. I felt betrayed.
And the girl Logan said he was mentoring?
I don't know if the former student slash stripper was just another one of Logan's lies. He was a predatory, deceptive liar.
I don't think anyone's ever going to know the truth about him. There's studies that show that people who are abusive have been abused before. I'm thinking that maybe he was a victim because he put himself in the victim role so much.
Meanwhile, after 7 months, Logan's attorneys located him hiding out in Europe. They convinced him to return to Portland, where he was officially booked for possession of child pornography.
I was very relieved when Logan was arrested, but it was so surreal.
On January 23, 2013, Logan Storm went to trial and pled not guilty.
I very much believe in our country and our laws. I respect the system and I respect the procedures.
Amy was forced to come face to face with the man she turned in.
The first time I saw him, I thought that I was going to be sick. I saw him do a double take, and I saw fear in his eyes. It made me feel powerful. I was protecting young children.
6 days later, the middle school teacher was convicted on 1 count of possessing child pornography. On September 10, 2013, Logan Storm was sentenced to 8 years for his crimes.
I think he deserved harsher. Honestly, this guy is somebody that should not be on the streets, ever.
It wasn't the maximum, but it was enough to show that it was a severe crime. And I didn't have to look over my shoulder, and I didn't have to worry where he was.
Today, Amy is still dealing with the reality of what she went through.
I feel like my life will forever be changed from this because I'm scared to get close to people. I'm scared that people could be hiding things.
Even though she's not ready to fully trust others again, Amy refuses to let what Logan did affect her future.
Amy is such a strong, honest person, and she's maintained an attitude of strength and perseverance. I'm really proud of her for that.
I'm very hopeful that other people will follow my lead, but if I didn't have such great friends, I don't think I would have made it through it.
Time possesses a unique and often cruel quality when it becomes tethered to an unresolved tragedy. For the vast majority of people, the passage of more than 3 decades represents a sweeping era of personal evolution, a timeline filled with shifting landscapes, new generations, and the gradual fading of old memories. But for those touched by the profound darkness that descended upon Austin, Texas, in the winter of 1991, time did not move forward. It froze completely on a single, frigid December night. The city of Austin during that era was a place standing on the precipice of massive cultural and economic expansion, yet it still clung tightly to a localized, trusting, and almost small-town atmosphere where neighbors knew one another and parents felt a pervasive sense of security when their children went out into the world. It was a community characterized by its vibrant youth, its university culture, and an overwhelming feeling of safety that blanketed its suburban streets and local businesses. This deeply ingrained illusion of safety was shattered irrevocably in a matter of hours, leaving behind a permanent scar on the psyche of the city and an enduring mystery that continues to haunt the annals of American forensic history. The location where this innocence was violently extinguished was entirely unassuming, a place that by its very nature represented the lighthearted and carefree essence of youth. It was a popular local establishment named I Can't Believe It's Yogurt, situated at the busy intersection of 29th Street and Lamar Boulevard. In the early 90s, establishments like this were the cornerstone of teenage social life. They were brightly lit sanctuaries filled with the sweet scent of sugary treats, places where high school students gathered after classes to gossip, study, and pass the time. Working a shift at the local yogurt shop was a quintessential teenage experience, a rite of passage that offered young people a taste of independence, a small paycheck, and a safe environment to interact with their peers. There was absolutely nothing about the building, the location, or the atmosphere that could have possibly foreshadowed the sheer magnitude of the horror that would soon unfold within its walls. It was, in every conceivable way, an environment perfectly designed for joy and community gathering, making the ultimate defilement of the space all the more incomprehensible and grotesque. The heartbeat of this tragic narrative belongs entirely to 4 young women, individuals whose lives were brimming with boundless potential, dreams, and the simple, everyday concerns of adolescence. To truly understand the gravity of the loss, one must first recognize who they were before they became victims. Jennifer Harbison was 17 years old, a young woman stepping onto the threshold of adulthood. She was taking on the responsibilities expected of someone her age, working the evening shift at the yogurt shop. Alongside her was her co-worker and friend, Eliza Thomas, who was also 17. Together, they formed a team that managed the store during the closing hours, a routine task that countless teenagers perform every single night across the country without a second thought. They were responsible, diligent, and completely unaware of the malevolence that was quietly making its way toward them on that fateful Friday night. The 6th of December was supposed to be just another shift, an ordinary conclusion to a standard week of school and work leading into the freedom of the weekend. But Jennifer and Eliza were not alone in the shop as the hours ticked closer to midnight. The deep bonds of family and friendship brought 2 younger girls into the establishment, tethering their fates to the older teenagers. Sarah Harbison, Jennifer's 15-year-old younger sister, had come to the shop. The relationship between sisters is often complex, but the act of a younger sibling waiting for an older one to finish work so they could travel home together speaks volumes about their connection and the ordinary, practical routines of their family life. Sarah was accompanied by her closest friend, Amy Ayers, who was only 13 years old. At 13, Amy was the youngest of the group, a child barely out of middle school, still navigating the earliest stages of her teenage years. The presence of Sarah and Amy in the shop that night was entirely innocent. They were simply passing the time, likely sitting in the booths, enjoying the warmth of a store against the December chill, chatting about school, friends, and and the upcoming weekend plans, simply waiting for Jennifer and Eliza to lock the doors and turn off the lights so they could all return to the safety of their respective homes. The contrast between the sheer innocence of these 4 girls and the calculated, brutal nature of the violence inflicted upon them is a chasm that the human mind struggles to bridge. 13, 15, and 17 are ages defined by growth and expectation, not by finality. These young women were robbed of every milestone that lay ahead of them. They would never attend their high school graduations, never experience the nervous thrill of college applications, never embark on careers, form families of their own, or grow old. Their futures were violently stolen by an entity or entities whose identity remains shrouded in shadows to this day. The tragedy is not merely in the loss of their lives, but in the total annihilation of their potential and the agonizing grief inflicted upon the families who were left behind to navigate a world that suddenly made absolutely no sense. The families of Jennifer, Eliza, Sarah, and Amy sent their daughters out into a world they believed was safe, only to have them taken away in the most nightmarish scenario imaginable. As the evening of December 6th progressed, the typical sounds of a closing business, the wiping down of counters, the counting of a cash register, the locking of the front doors gave way to an unspeakable silence, followed by unimaginable terror. Shortly before midnight, the routine atmosphere of the intersection of 29th and Lamar was disrupted by the sight and smell of thick smoke billowing from the yogurt shop. Fire is an incredibly destructive force, often utilized by those with the darkest of intentions to consume the physical remnants of their actions. The flames that engulfed the interior of the shop were not an accident, nor were they a tragic malfunction of equipment. They were a deliberate, calculated attempt to erase the unspeakable acts that had just occurred in the back room of the establishment. When the fire department arrived on the scene and valiantly battled the blaze, they were focused on preserving property and ensuring no one was trapped inside. They could not have anticipated that the extinguishing of the flames would reveal a tableau of human suffering so profound that it would permanently traumatize the seasoned first responders who discovered it. The reality of the crime scene was a stark, horrifying testament to absolute cruelty. The 4 girls were found in the back room, their dignity stripped away, their bodies bound using their own clothing. They had been subjected to the ultimate violation of their autonomy and safety before being executed in a cold, systematic manner. The positioning of the bodies, stacked together, and the method of their murder indicated a level of detachment and brutality that sent shockwaves through the entire law enforcement community and the public at large. The use of accelerants to fuel the fire demonstrated a clear, premeditated strategy by the perpetrator to destroy forensic evidence, specifically biological material, and DNA that could link them to the atrocity. The killer, or killers, walked away into the dark Austin night, leaving behind a smoldering ruin that contained the broken bodies of 4 innocent children, initiating a complex, agonizing, and heavily flawed investigative journey that would consume decades of effort and resources. The aftermath of this discovery plunged the city of Austin into a state of collective mourning and intense paranoia. The sheer brutality of the act, committed against 4 teenage girls in a public place, meant that the illusion of security was entirely shattered. Parents looked at their children with renewed anxiety, curfews were suddenly enforced with rigid strictness, and the community demanded answers that the authorities were desperately struggling to find. The pressure mounted on the Austin Police Department from the very first hour. The public desperately needed to believe that the monster capable of such an atrocity would be swiftly identified, apprehended, and brought to justice. However, the deliberate destruction of the crime scene by fire severely hampered the initial collection of traditional evidence. The physical environment had been compromised, burned, and drenched in water from the firefighting efforts, turning the back room of the yogurt shop into a forensic nightmare. This intense pressure and the desperate need for closure eventually led the investigation down a perilous and tragic path. Years turned into nearly a decade of dead ends, exhausted leads, and mounting frustration. The void left by the absence of a clear suspect was eventually filled by a narrative born from desperation. 8 long years after the flames were extinguished, the authorities arrested 4 young men, weaving a complex web of interrogations that lasted for dozens of hours. Under immense psychological pressure, confessions were extracted, creating a false dawn for the families of the victims who believed, for a fleeting moment, that justice was finally within their grasp. The subsequent trials, convictions, and sentencing of these young men to life in prison and even death row provided a manufactured sense of resolution to a city that had been holding its breath since 1991. But the foundation of these convictions was inherently flawed, built upon coerced statements rather than unshakable physical evidence. The true tragedy of this false resolution is twofold. It compounded the suffering of the victims' families, who were forced to endure the agonizing process of the judicial system, only to have their fragile sense of closure violently ripped away years later. Simultaneously, it robbed the wrongfully convicted men of years of their freedom, subjecting them to the horrors of the penal system for a crime they did not commit. It was only through the relentless advancement of scientific technology, specifically the evolution of DNA analysis techniques, nearly 2 decades after the murders, that the truth of this flawed investigation was brought to light. When advanced testing finally isolated a distinct male DNA profile from the heavily compromised evidence collected at the original scene, the results were unequivocal. The genetic material did not belong to any of the 4 men who had been blamed for the atrocity. The entire narrative meticulously constructed by law enforcement collapsed instantly, forcing the justice system to release the men and leaving the investigation exactly where it had started on that cold December morning in 1991. Today, the case remains an open, bleeding wound in the heart of Texas. It is a chilling reminder of the limitations of the justice system and the enduring power of forensic science. The Austin Police Department and federal agencies continue to search for the phantom who committed this act, turning to the cutting-edge realm of genetic genealogy in a desperate bid to match the unknown DNA profile to a family tree. But the passage of time is a relentless adversary. Witnesses pass away, memories fade, and the physical landscape of the city continues to change. The building that once housed the yogurt shop has transformed, blending into the modern urban environment, but the space it occupies will forever be defined by the absence of Jennifer, Eliza, Sarah, and Amy. Their story is a somber testament to the fragility of life and the enduring quest for truth in the face of insurmountable darkness, a narrative that demands reflection on the innocent lives lost and the monstrous capability of those who walk among us undetected. The search for their killer continues, driven by the hope that one day, the shadow that fell over Austin will finally be dragged into the light. To understand the sheer magnitude of the tragedy that befell Austin, Texas, on the 6th of December in 1991, one must first immerse themselves in the distinct atmospheric landscape of the era and the deeply personal realities of the 4 young women whose lives were so brutally extinguished. Austin in the early 90s was a city caught in a beautiful, lingering transition. It was beginning to feel the growing pains of technological and economic expansion that would eventually transform it into a bustling metropolis, yet it still fiercely maintained the soul of a sleepy, closely knit college town. It was a place characterized by its sprawling neighborhoods, its vibrant local music scene, and a pervasive, almost naive sense of communal security. People knew their neighbors. Children rode their bicycles until the streetlights flickered on, and parents rarely felt the need to lock their front doors during the day. The northern suburbs, where the intersection of 29th Street and Lamar Boulevard was situated, represented the quintessential American dream of the late 20th century. It was an environment perceived to be entirely insulated from the violent, random crimes that plagued larger, more cynical cities across the nation. This profound illusion of safety was the foundation upon which the families of the victims built their lives, making the sudden intrusion of absolute evil entirely incomprehensible. Within this landscape of suburban tranquility, local businesses served as vital social hubs, particularly for the youth of the community. The establishment known as I Can't Believe It's Yogurt was not merely a place of commerce. It was a brightly lit sanctuary for the teenagers of Austin. In an era long before the advent of smartphones, social media, and digital connectivity, young people sought out physical spaces to congregate, connect, and establish their independence away from the watchful eyes of their parents. The yogurt shop, with its neon signage casting a warm glow into the evening, its pastel-colored interior, and the constant, sugary aroma of waffle cones and frozen desserts, was the perfect backdrop for adolescent life. It was a place where high school students would gather after Friday night football games, where first dates were nervously navigated over cups of vanilla swirl, and where the most pressing concerns revolved around upcoming exams and weekend social plans. The shop was a beacon of innocence, a structured, safe environment where the community implicitly trusted that their children would be shielded from harm. Working a part-time job at a place like I Can't Believe It's Yogurt was a widely recognized rite of passage for teenagers in Austin and across the broader American landscape. It was an opportunity to earn a meager but fiercely valued income, to learn the fundamental principles of responsibility, and to experience the camaraderie that comes from sharing mundane tasks with peers. For 17-year-old Jennifer Harbison, this job was a stepping stone into the adult world she was rapidly approaching. Jennifer was a high school student balancing the demands of her education with her duties at the yogurt shop. She was known to be a responsible, diligent young woman, someone who could be trusted to manage the cash register, interact with customers, and ensure the store was properly closed down at the end of the night. At 17, Jennifer was standing on the precipice of her future, a future filled with the promise of graduation, college, and the endless possibilities that await a bright, capable young woman. Her presence at the shop that night was a testament to her work ethic and her commitment to the small responsibilities she had taken on as she navigated the transition from childhood to adulthood. Working alongside Jennifer during that fateful evening shift was her close friend and co-worker, Eliza Thomas. Also 17 years old, Eliza shared the same generational milestones and teenage experiences as Jennifer. The bond between co-workers in these entry-level, adolescent jobs is often incredibly strong, forged through the shared monotony of wiping down sticky counters, restocking supplies, and dealing with the occasional difficult customer. Eliza and Jennifer were a team, relying on each other to make the evening hours pass more quickly and smoothly. They represented the everyday, working-class youth of Austin, young women who were simply trying to earn a little spending money and gain some independence in a safe, predictable environment. Eliza was a vibrant individual with her own unique dreams, aspirations, and a family that loved her deeply. Like Jennifer, her life was entirely consumed by the normal, everyday concerns of a 17-year-old girl. She had no reason to suspect that the familiar routine of closing the shop, locking the doors, and counting the day's earnings would be interrupted by an act of violence so profound that it would permanently alter the history of her city. The dynamic of the evening shifted with the arrival of two younger girls, intertwining the responsibilities of the older teenagers with the deep bonds of family and friendship. Sarah Harbison, Jennifer's 15-year-old sister, came to the yogurt shop not as an employee, but simply as a sibling seeking the company and protection of her older sister. The relationship between Jennifer and Sarah was characterized by the typical affection and minor frictions that define sisterhood, but beneath it all was a foundation of unconditional love and reliance. For a 15-year-old, the world is still a vast and sometimes intimidating place, and the presence of an older, more established sibling provides a crucial sense of security. Sarah was navigating the complex, social hierarchy of high school, a younger teenager with her own circle of friends and her own set of developing interests. By going to the yogurt shop to wait for Jennifer to finish her shift, Sarah was engaging in a completely mundane, practical family routine. It was a logistical decision designed to ensure that both sisters would travel home safely together, an arrangement that perfectly reflects the protective nature of their family dynamic and the absolute trust they placed in their community. Accompanying Sarah on this seemingly ordinary Friday night was her closest confidant, 13-year-old Amy Ayers. The presence of Amy at the yogurt shop adds an incredibly profound layer of tragedy to an already unimaginable narrative. At 13, Amy was the youngest of the four girls, a child who had only recently transitioned from elementary to middle school. She was at an age characterized by profound vulnerability, a time when the world is viewed through a lens of deep innocence and burgeoning curiosity. The friendship between Sarah and Amy was a testament to the powerful bonds forged in the early teenage years, a time when friends become an integral part of one's identity and emotional support system. Amy had joined Sarah simply to keep her company, to share in the quiet downtime of the empty yogurt shop, and to participate in the casual, comfortable atmosphere of a Friday night spent away from home. She was a guest in this environment, a young girl whose only intention was to spend time with her best friend before heading home to the safety of her family. The contrast between the internal worlds of these four young women and the external reality that was hurtling toward them is a source of immense sorrow. Their minds were undoubtedly occupied with the innocent, everyday thoughts that characterize youth. They were likely discussing their plans for the upcoming weekend, gossiping about their peers, sharing their hopes for the future, and perhaps complaining mildly about the tedious tasks required to close the shop. They were entirely focused on the immediate, tangible aspects of their lives, completely unaware of the malevolent forces that were operating in the shadows of their city. The concept of extreme violence, of calculated cruelty, was entirely alien to their lived experience. They were existing in a bubble of suburban security, a bubble that had been carefully maintained by their parents, their schools, and their community. The shattering of this bubble would not only claim their lives, but would also destroy the fundamental sense of safety that had defined their existence up until that moment. As the clock crept closer to midnight, the atmosphere inside the yogurt shop would have grown quiet and industrious. The steady stream of evening customers would have dwindled to nothing, leaving the four girls alone in the brightly lit space. Jennifer and Eliza would have been focused on their closing duties, sweeping the floors, securing the cash, and ensuring that everything was perfectly in order for the next day's business. Sarah and Amy would have been waiting patiently, perhaps sitting in one of the pastel-colored booths, their conversation eventually winding down as the exhaustion of the week began to set in. The December air outside was chilling, emphasizing the warmth and security of the shop's interior. In these final moments of normalcy, the four girls were united by a shared sense of routine and a collective anticipation of returning to their respective homes. They were a microcosm of youthful innocence, entirely detached from the grim reality of the adult world and the capacity for unimaginable darkness that resides within it. For the parents of Jennifer, Eliza, Sarah, and Amy, that Friday evening was marked by the comfortable, underlying assumption that their daughters were safe. They were resting at home, perhaps watching television or preparing for sleep, secure in the knowledge that their children were exactly where they were supposed to be. The yogurt shop was considered a trusted environment, a place where the worst potential outcome was a minor workplace mishap or a late arrival home. The concept that their daughters could be targeted by a predator, that they could be subjected to an act of systemic, extreme violence in a public commercial space, was simply not within the realm of possibility. The parents' peace of mind was a direct reflection of the broader community's belief in its own invulnerability, a belief that would be violently dismantled before the sun rose on Saturday morning. The agonizing wait for daughters who would never walk through the front door again is a pain that words can scarcely articulate, a sudden, brutal plunge from ordinary domestic tranquility into a permanent, waking nightmare. The tragic intersection of these four specific lives creates a narrative tapestry that is deeply heartbreaking. Jennifer, the responsible older sister stepping into adulthood, Eliza, the steadfast friend and co-worker sharing the burdens of early independence, Sarah, the loyal younger sibling seeking the comfort of family, and Amy, the innocent child caught in the wrong place at the most horrific possible time. Together, they represented a spectrum of adolescence, a collection of hopes, dreams, and unfulfilled potential. Their presence in the yogurt shop on that specific night was the result of countless mundane decisions and ordinary circumstances, a series of everyday choices that ultimately led them into the path of an unprecedented evil. The physical space they occupied, once a symbol of youthful joy and community connection, was destined to become a permanent monument to their loss and a stark reminder of the fragility of life. To look back at the portraits of these four girls is to be confronted with a profound sense of injustice. Their faces, captured in school photographs and family albums, radiate a light and a vitality that stands in sharp defiance of the darkness that claimed them. They were not merely victims of a crime, they were beloved daughters, cherished sisters, and fiercely loyal friends. They were individuals with distinct personalities, unique quirks, and entire lifetimes of experiences waiting to be realized. The premature cessation of their journeys leaves a void that can never be adequately filled, a silence that resonates through the decades. The story of the Austin yogurt shop murders is inextricably bound to the identities of Jennifer, Eliza, Sarah, and Amy. It is their innocence, their potential, and their tragic vulnerability that forms the emotional core of this enduring mystery, demanding that we remember them not just for how they died, but for the vibrant, beautiful lives they lived before the world fundamentally changed forever. The intersection of 29th Street and Lamar Boulevard typically experienced a drastic shift in rhythm as Friday night bled into Saturday morning. The steady hum of commuter traffic and the lively energy of evening patrons would gradually dissolve, replaced by the stillness of a sleeping city. As the clock inched toward midnight on December 6, 1991, the ambient light from street lamps and the glowing signs of local businesses cast long, solitary shadows across the pavement. Inside the yogurt shop, the mundane choreography of closing time should have been reaching its final act. The floors were likely swept, the heavy metal cash drawer emptied and balanced, the leftover equipment sanitized for the following day. For Jennifer, Eliza, Sarah, and Amy, these final moments inside the store represented the last hurdle before the comforting embrace of the weekend. The physical isolation of the building, situated as a standalone structure in a small commercial strip, meant that once the doors were locked and the open sign was switched off, the interior became a secluded island. The windows, large and inviting during the daylight hours, now served as dark mirrors reflecting the brightly lit interior against the pitch-black canvas of the Texas night. It was within this isolated pocket of illumination that the unimaginable transpired, a sudden and violent rupture of normalcy that occurred entirely unseen by the outside world. The exact sequence of events, the precise moment the predator or predators breached the perceived safety of the shop, remains locked in the impenetrable silence of that room. What is known is that the quiet routine of 4 innocent girls was violently hijacked, transforming their sanctuary into a theater of absolute terror. The first external indication that something had gone catastrophically wrong was not a scream or a shattered window, but rather the insidious creep of thick, acrid smoke seeping into the crisp December air. Shortly before midnight, the unmistakable scent of combustion began to drift across the quiet intersection. The glow of a fire, unnatural and hungry, became visible from the street, prompting the immediate activation of emergency protocols. When the emergency dispatch received the report of a structure fire at the yogurt shop, the response was standard and swift. Fire engines tore through the quiet Austin streets, their sirens slicing through the stillness of the night, their flashing red and white lights painting the facades of neighboring buildings in chaotic bursts of color. For the first responders en route to the scene, the expectation was a routine commercial blaze, perhaps an electrical fault or a piece of machinery left unattended. Their primary objective was containment, property preservation, and ensuring that no late-night employees or transient individuals were trapped within the burning structure. There was absolutely no precedent, no cognitive framework, to prepare them for what awaited inside. As the heavy fire apparatus arrived and the firefighters began to deploy their hoses, the situation appeared to be a straightforward battle against the elements. The immediate focus was entirely on suppressing the flames that were aggressively consuming the interior of the shop, particularly the rear section of the building where the fire seemed to have originated and burned with intense ferocity. Battling a structure fire is a chaotic and inherently destructive process, an unfortunate necessity dictated by the primary goal of extinguishing the flames. Thousands of gallons of high-pressure water were blasted into the compromised building, tearing through drywall, shattering glass, and obliterating whatever physical layout remained intact. The intense heat of the blaze, combined with the sheer force of the water and the heavy boots of the firefighters navigating the blinding smoke, created an environment where preservation of delicate details was physically impossible. This necessary destruction was, tragically, the exact outcome the perpetrator had calculated and desired. The fire was not an accident. It was a deliberate, malicious tool utilized specifically to sanitize the crime scene. By saturating the environment with an accelerant, believed to be a substance like gasoline or a highly flammable alcohol, the killer ensured that the ensuing inferno would systematically devour the most crucial physical evidence. The flames were designed to consume clothing fibers, to melt away fingerprints, and most importantly, to completely eradicate any trace of biological material or DNA that could link the monster to the atrocity. The firefighters, operating with extreme bravery and efficiency, were inadvertently participating in the destruction of a meticulously orchestrated crime scene. As the thick black smoke slowly began to clear and the roar of the fire gave way to the dripping of water and the hiss of cooling embers, the atmosphere shifted from urgent action to an eerie, devastated calm. It was during the secondary sweep of the structure, a routine procedure to ensure all hot spots were extinguished and the building was entirely clear of occupants, that the true nature of the emergency was revealed. First responders, their gear soaked and heavy with soot, made their way into the rear storage area of the shop. The air was thick with the suffocating smell of burnt synthetic materials, charred wood, and the lingering, sharp chemical odor of the accelerant. Their flashlights cut through the remaining haze, sweeping over the blackened walls and the ruined inventory. It was in this small, confined space, away from the large front windows and the public eye, that the beams of light illuminated a tableau of human suffering so profound it defied all comprehension. The initial confusion of the first responders rapidly calcified into a state of paralyzed horror as their minds struggled to process the visual information. The devastation they were looking at was not the tragic result of smoke inhalation or a collapsed roof. The scene was aggressively unnatural, a stark and deliberate arrangement that spoke of profound malice and a complete absence of human empathy. The trauma experienced by the seasoned professionals who first stepped into that room is immeasurable, as they were suddenly forced to pivot from battling a structural fire to standing in the epicenter of one of the most brutal mass murders in the history of the state. The grim reality of the back room was defined by the complete degradation and brutalization of the 4 young victims. Jennifer, Eliza, Sarah, and Amy were found in a state of absolute vulnerability, having been systematically stripped of their clothing. The perpetrator had utilized the victims' own garments to bind them, a cruel and intimate method of restraint that left the girls entirely defenseless. This physical subjugation was a clear demonstration of the killer's desire for total control and domination over the victims in their final moments. The bodies of the 4 teenagers were not scattered haphazardly, but were instead deliberately stacked on top of one another, a grotesque and dehumanizing arrangement that further illustrated the cold, detached nature of the violence. The ultimate cause of their deaths was as calculated as the restraints that bound them. Each of the 4 girls had been shot in the head, executed in a systematic and merciless fashion. The term execution style implies a terrifying level of deliberation, a scenario where the victims were likely acutely aware of their impending fate, rendering their final moments a landscape of unimaginable terror. The sheer brutality required to systematically end the lives of 4 young, defenseless people in such a close, confined space requires a level of psychopathy that is profoundly chilling. The perpetrator did not merely kill these girls, they completely dismantled their dignity before executing them and leaving their bodies to be consumed by the flames. As the horrific details of the scene were relayed over emergency radios, the atmosphere outside the ruined yogurt shop changed instantly. The perimeter, initially established to keep bystanders safe from the fire, was rapidly expanded and reinforced with crime scene tape. The flashing lights of the fire engines were soon joined by a massive influx of police cruisers, forensic units, and investigative personnel. The intersection of 29th and Lamar, only hours ago a quiet corner of a sleepy city, was transformed into the bustling, chaotic nucleus of a major homicide investigation. The realization that the fire was a secondary crime, a calculated mechanism of destruction designed to mask a quadruple murder, sent shockwaves through the chain of command. Detectives arriving on the scene were confronted with a nightmare scenario. They were tasked with unraveling a complex, brutal execution in an environment that had been aggressively compromised by both the killer and the subsequent firefighting efforts. The water that pooled on the floor, the charred remains of the walls, and the overpowering stench of smoke and chemical accelerants served as agonizing reminders of how much potential evidence had already been lost. The investigators knew immediately